Hello, welcome to Horticulture and Homes. Today I'm going to be busy putting up this cabbage. It's time to make sauerkraut. I videoed my sauerkraut that I made the end of last summer and lost all my video when I lost my hard drive, so I'm going to try and do this again for you this year and show you step by step how to process this cabbage and turn it into sauerkraut. And I can tell you it is so much better than what you buy in your grocery stores. The flavor is really great. When I fix sauerkraut for supper, I always have to fix 2 quarts because my daughter will eat an entire quart by herself in 1 to 2 days. She really enjoys it. She is not fond of what comes out of the grocery store because of the strong flavor and the excess salt that's in there, but this is something she really enjoys, so I've got to make some more kraut for her, so join me. Alright, to make this sauerkraut, the first thing we have to do is clean up the heads of cabbage. Got some insect damage on some of these leaves, so I've got to clean all that up first. Okay, this head is relatively clean now, and all I'm going to do first, I'll get it sliced in half, and then we've got to take this core out. I like to cut the cabbage into wedges so that I have it into 6 pieces. I think it's easier to get the core out to cut 6 pieces rather than to just try and cut it into 4ths. And once the core is removed, I've got my food processor at the ready, and I have my thin slicing disc in. There's different ways that you can cut your cabbage for sauerkraut. The easiest, of course, is this method. There are sauerkraut cutters. They're large wooden mandolins with a metal blade. I think they're made out of stainless steel now, but they're made just for cutting cabbage for sauerkraut, and I think they run about $100. You can purchase those through the internet. I have a small mandolin and I've misplaced it. Right now I guess it's just in a safe place, but if I wind up digging it out and finding it, I'll show it to you. So you can either do it by hand, and the other thing that you can do is to completely work by hand. And slice it into these thin ribbons with a knife. And you want your pieces to be as thin as a quarter, somewhere between a dime and a quarter, so very, very thin slices. Now I'm going to want about 25 pounds of shredded cabbage. I'm going to be working with a 5-gallon bucket. But you can actually work in whatever quantity you like. Now I do have some large pieces here. I don't want that in there. I can slice that by hand or use it for something else. Then I also have, this looks really nice. But here on this other end, the way the cabbage leaf was, how it was sliced, that's way too thick. I don't want this at all. So you do have to kind of pick through your cabbage because you want it to ferment at the same rate. So I'm going to go through and pull out the pieces that I don't want. And I'll just keep on going. It'll take a while. I'm going to work in batches of about 5 pounds. I think that's the easiest to work with. And these large bowls, if you don't have one and you plan on doing a lot of canning, I recommend that you get one. This one's quite large. It's from inside of the rim, it looks like it's about 17 inches across, and it's about 7 inches deep. I have several bowls this size or larger, and I use them constantly when I'm canning. So what I'll do is I'll have this tedious job of picking out these large bits that I don't want. Okay, as I process this cabbage and I pull out those large bits, I'll take those and run those right back through my food processor again and see what I get. That way I don't have a large waste of cabbage. I wanted to talk just a little bit about scales and weighing the food. For years I used this set of scales, which I purchased in an antique shop years ago, and it's fairly accurate. It zeroes. I can zero it out okay, you know, place my bowl on, zero that out, and it's fairly accurate. And one of the ways to check that is to take something that you know the weight of, say a couple cans of tomato sauce, or a 5-pound bag of sugar, or a 5 or 10 pound hand weight, and you can see how accurate your scales are. And anytime I make more than a couple loaves of bread, I will actually weigh my flour, because this is much more accurate and you get a more consistent product that way by weighing. And also, if you do any large amounts of baking, baking is all done by weights and measures. By weighing your dry ingredients. Now, I've since graduated to a postal scale, which I purchased through eBay, I think it was, and because I send a lot of packages, and so this scale has become more decorative in my kitchen, although I'm going to keep it because if I don't have power, that's what I'm going to be using. But I do use this postal scale most of the time, and I can use that either with the cord or with batteries. So it's something to think about with your kitchen, about having a nice set of scales handy. Okay, I have weighed my cabbage, and I have my 5 pounds of cabbage ready. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of canning salt, I'm going to try and sprinkle that evenly over my cabbage. Do not use table salt or iodized salt. You don't want any additives. So a canning salt or kosher salt. If you use kosher salt, you want to add a little extra because of the size of the granule. I don't remember the exact measurements. I think it might be an additional, what is it? It's an additional 1/3 teaspoon maybe for every tablespoon, something along those lines, but you can easily Google that and look that up. I don't remember off the top of my head. So now what I want to do is I want to get in here with my hands. I want to mix this. This is going to cause the cabbage to wilt and bring those juices out. This cabbage is fairly dry. It was still in the greenhouse. There's some large pieces. If I find a large piece, I'll pull those out. And it has been very hot and dry. So I may have to make some brine and add that to my cabbage as I'm packing it. And since I do not have a 5-gallon crock, and I can't really spend the money to go get one, I'm going to be using a 5-gallon food grade bucket. It works just fine. I tend to keep a separate bucket just for making my sauerkraut, and that's the only thing that I use it for, because when you're done with your sauerkraut, the bucket will smell like sauerkraut, and it will discolor a little bit. Okay, that's mixed up pretty good, and I can already feel how wet the cabbage is becoming, where that salt is drawing that moisture out. And what will happen is that moisture and those sugars will start to ferment, and we'll get sauerkraut in about 5 or 6 weeks from now. Okay, this is my 5-gallon bucket that I like to use, and you can see how the inside is discolored, and that's just from making sauerkraut in the bucket. It turns it yellow, like what the sauerkraut looks like after it's done fermenting. Now, if I need to make up any brine, the recipe for the brine is 1.5 tablespoons of salt and 1 quart of water, and you heat your water so that the salt will dissolve, and then you let it cool before you use it as a brine. So I work in 5-pound batches. Right now I have 2 batches of cabbage that are salted down. This is the first batch that I made. And I'm standing, I have this bucket on my kitchen counter, and I'm standing on a stool to be able to do this. I know a lot of people will do this, they'll sit this bucket on the floor. You know, that's just not sanitary, and I don't like to do that, so I do everything from the counter, and everything's washed up and clean and sanitized and all that kind of good stuff. I'm going to get all this in there, and then you can use your hand or any type of flat heavy object, and you're going to push this cabbage down in the bucket because you want to remove all the air that's in the bucket. So I have my Amish potato masher that has a nice long handle on it, so that's what I'm going to use. And my potato masher is not stainless steel, and this metal would react with this salt. I've just taken a 1 quart bag and placed over the end of that. Now all I'm going to do is mash it all down. And what happens is that I work the air out so that I can get an anaerobic environment so that this can ferment, and it also will cause the cabbage to release some of that juice, because we need that for fermentation. And there's not a specific amount of time that you wait between the you salting the cabbage down and placing it in here. I would say it's probably about 30 minutes that it's salted down once I mix it. That's about enough time. You want it to start to wilt and release some of the juice. And you can see here, see the juice there? So, and it's, it's a pretty limp. That's what you're looking for. Okay, here I have 20 pounds of cabbage, and I could easily put in 25 pounds of cabbage, but I just don't have that at the moment. 30 pounds would probably be a bit much for this bucket, because you do need some space at the top. And as I said before, this cabbage is a little bit dry. You can see the bubbles. Okay, so we have some bubbles coming up. So the fermentation is already beginning. I want about 2 inches, probably, yeah, about 2 inches of brine above my cabbage. I'm going to let this settle back down. This will be right about right. I'm going to take a clean cloth, push that down. I want to actually push the edges of this cloth down around the edge. See, I'm actually pushing it down around the edge, sealing that cabbage in, because I don't want it to float up. If it floats up, then you can get some interesting molds and things growing, and I really don't want that. And you would do the same thing if you were working with a crock. Okay, I've got a few pieces of loose cabbage. Okay, I'm going to see about skimming that off because I really don't want that staying on the top. Any bits of cabbage that are exposed to the air will get some interesting molds and things growing on there, which we don't want. Now, if I had a piece of clean muslin, I would prefer that over the 2 layers, actually it's 4 layers of cheesecloth that I'm using. But I don't have that ready at the moment, so I just use the cheesecloth. Now I'm going to take a plate that's about the size of the inside there, and what I'm doing is making sure all that cabbage stays submerged. Okay, now all I've done is taken a quart canning jar, and I used a plastic lid, filled that with water, put that lid on tightly, and I've used that as my weight. Now, if you're concerned about the water spilling out or something, you could actually fill this with brine. Now I have a few little tiny stray pieces of cabbage down there. I'm going to go in with my mesh strainer that is stainless steel. You want something that's going to be non-reactive with that salt and what will soon become acidic. And I'm going to try and pick up those little bits. If I'd used a piece of muslin, it would have worked a bit better than the cheesecloth. So you can see I want to get these little bits out because I don't want them to start to mold or anything like that from floating on the surface. But it is now late in the evening. This has taken me, I think I've spent about 3 hours or so processing this, getting this all ready, maybe 3.5 hours. This is now ready to go. I want to sit this in an environment where it is the proper temperature, which would be between 70 and 75 degrees. If it is too hot, you'll get some other things going on besides fermentation, and you could spoil the entire batch. So keep a watch on your temperature. That's the reason if any of you had relatives who you would watch make sauerkraut in a crock, a lot of times they would take that down to the root cellar or to a basement to ferment. And you can see here along the edges, you can see some bubbles, and that's our fermentation happening. I did want to point out that if you use a crock and it is an old crock, make sure that it has a lead-free glaze on it. You can pick up testing kits usually at the big box home improvement stores, but be careful of that if you're dealing with an old crock. Now, to keep the insects away from this and the dust out of it, I'm just going to take the lid, since my jar sits a little high. I could have used a couple like 28-ounce cans of tomato sauce or something, and just place those cans down into a zip top bag, something that's waterproof and food safe, and put that down there as my weight. That would have been fine also. But I'm just going to place this on and then I'll put a heavy object on top so this stays on and doesn't wobble. I tried to put it on the correct way. I've got a gap here and I don't want that big gap. So I'm going to let this set. It'll take anywhere from probably 3 to 5 weeks is usually what it takes for me. But when this has stopped bubbling, I'll check it and see if we have sauerkraut. And then every 2 to 3 times a week, about 3 times a week the first few weeks, I'm going to be checking this, skimming off any scum that rises to the top. See another piece of cabbage there. And keeping a close eye on it those first couple weeks. As the fermentation begins to slow down, I don't have to keep quite as close an eye on it. And the one thing I failed to mention was that if you do choose to put a lid of some sort on your bucket to keep debris and things out, you don't want a tight-fitting lid. You want something that just barely, something that just covers it, that doesn't fit tightly. Because while this is working, you've got this gas that's being given off, and you don't, if you put this lid on tight, you're going to have the contents will be under pressure, and that's something you don't want. Now here we are nearly a week later, and this is what I was talking about, the scum coming to the top. So I am just going to go in and start to skim that off. Now you can see how the brining liquid has darkened and has a deep yellow tone to it, kind of a golden yellow. That's what we're aiming for. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'll come back and check this in a few more days. Okay, earlier I told you I would show you my slaw cutter if I could find it, and I finally found it. And I purchased this, I don't know, a couple years ago as a kitchen decoration, and I never got around to hanging it up. So this is called a Bluffton slaw cutter, and it's supposed to cut fruits and vegetables, and I have not I've not done anything with it yet, so maybe we'll do a little demonstration too. It's made in the United States. I don't have a website for this company. I'm not sure if there is one, but here's the information there at the bottom on where the company's located, so if you need to get in contact with them, you could. And they make several different models of cutters and shredders and things of that nature that are handmade. So here's the deal. There are large slaw cutters that you can buy that are wood framed cutters that are really nice, but they're kind of pricey. They're $100 or more, I think. Where this one was, I don't have the price on it. I think this was less than $10, but I'm not real sure about that. But the wooden ones are made much the same way. You have a wooden frame, and then you have metal blades on your wooden frame, but it's much larger. So you could use a whole, at least a quarter of a cabbage in place on there and cut it at the same time. This cuts very small pieces of cabbage. Or whatever. So then you would also have, on the wooden ones, you would have a wooden frame with this box, and this is where you place your cabbages in that opening, and then you push down on the cabbage and run it across to cut the vegetables. Okay, I did have a cucumber in my refrigerator, so let's see what happens here. So I'm actually placing my cucumber in there, and I'm going to hold on to this and move it, use my thumb to move it. Okay, that worked pretty easy. You get a really nice thin slice with this. I'm sure it takes quite a bit more elbow grease if you have a carrot or slaw or anything in there, but it does work, and could quicken the time if you didn't have electricity and you needed to shred fruits or vegetables.